What's going on, guys? I want to say I'm sorry I haven't been posting for the longest time, but I want to remind you guys that I do attend college full-time and I've been busy studying and taking tests. Also, I do work full-time, so that takes a lot of my time, and I couldn't go off-roading because Colorado also got like too many blizzards, and unfortunately the best trails get tons of snow, making them impassable. That being said, today I'm doing a rig walk around video because recently I've been getting a lot of comments on some of my videos about why I do what I do, why I did this, why I decided to run this setup and blah blah blah. Well, this is going to be this video. I'm going to talk about everything I've done to it and why. So yeah, let's get started. So I'm going to call this stage 1 of the build. There's not going to be any more drastic changes, and if there is, it's going to be different changes. So let's just call this stage 1. So let me show you guys real quick. So obviously the first thing you guys notice is the tires, and that's probably going to be the title of this video, how to fit 33-inch tires on an X-ray with no lift. So of course I got some BFGs, KM2s, 33s by 12.5, 15s. Alright, so far my thoughts on these tires is I really love them. They just look really aggressive, and they make the Jeep look more rugged and off-road and all that shit. So I haven't tried them out in the complete wet. I kind of did. I mean, I went over some creeks and then I had some obstacles, and I mean they've done good. Obviously the initial start they slip, but after that they heat up and they just grip. I haven't tried them out in the mud at all, but I'm guessing they're gonna do really well because when I tried them out in the snow, they self-clean really good. You just keep the tires spinning and all these big lugs and all this space just throws the snow out. So I'm guessing in the mud it's gonna be really good. Now I did try them out in the dry, obviously, and in rocks, and in sand, dirt. You could just feel the tire just claw and dig in and search for traction. And yeah, so far they've been amazing off-road. They grip really well. I don't daily drive this Jeep, but when I do drive it on the street or the highway, they're insanely quiet. Alright, the next thing would obviously be the wheels. Now I got the wheels for a couple of reasons. One, to change the look of the Jeep. Now these are Proton 69 wheels. They're 15 by 8, and I mean they look pretty dope. They look really cool, and they're not even that expensive. It adds a really good look or different look to the Jeep. Now the second reason I got these wheels, I knew I wanted to run a 12.5 wide tire, and the smallest wheel size you could run with that size tire is an 8-inch wide rim. The reason I did that, I wanted a narrow rim on a bigger tire so I could air down more. So I've aired down these all the way down to 5 psi, and I haven't popped a bead whatsoever. Another reason why I went with these wheels is because of the weight. I decided to go with aluminum over steel, and most of you guys are gonna say there's not that much difference in weight, but when I went to see them personally and picked them up, it's kind of a noticeable difference. On paper it might not be a lot, but once you actually physically pick it up, for me at least, it was a notable difference. So having stock gears and stock drivetrain and all that, I wanted to save as much weight as I can. So that's the reason I went with these. Alright, so the key part to fitting 33s with no lift on my X-ray is obviously cutting the shit out of your fenders. Now, how I did it, I basically went up to this body line on the Jeep, and I was trying to make it look as aesthetically pleasing as possible. So the way I did it is I just traced out the stock fender flare, but I moved it up to the body line, like I said, and I just traced out the fender flare and I just started cutting, basically. And I think it looks good. I mean, I didn't want to go for those ugly cuts that you see most people go when they just go at straight angles. I think that would kind of ugly. So I was trying to make it look as best as I can. So like I said, I just traced out the fender flare and try not to fuck up. Another step I added to the front cut is I folded this inner pinch seam weld. I just hammered it all in flat so it doesn't hit the tire, and I hammered in part of the firewall right here. So all of this you can see is hammered, so when the tire flexes up, it doesn't hit that, it all clears. Now the rear is a little different. You obviously can't cut as much as the front unless you're trying to weld and do custom shit. So basically in the rear, I did the rear cut and fold right here, and then the fenders help it clear more. And I also did the rear quarter panel cut and fold. So I have videos on all this on my channel already, so make sure to check those out. And if you really want to do this rear quarter panel unfold, I literally have step-by-step on how I did it. So make sure you check that out. So one of the questions I get asked more frequently is, how do I prevent the tire from fucking shit up? So I tell them it's pretty easy. You just bump stop it. So this is how I bump stop the front. So basically what I did, right in the center of the spring coil perch, I drilled a hole and I just bolted a hockey puck, which you can see right there. So that's the hockey puck, and I just used the stock upper bump stop. And that's just enough to prevent my tire from completely fucking some shit up there. Now, I still use the stock bump stops. So, and as you can see, sometimes they tear. They do last quite a while, but after a lot of abuse, they're gonna start to tear off. So if any of you guys know a better solution to this, or a better material, or better bump stop, drop it on the comments. But basically for now, I just have a hockey puck bolted to the spring perch. Now, the rear is a little bit different, but it's much easier because it's a leaf spring. Basically, there's this thing called bump stop plates. Now, I got them from BFG Off-Road, and what you do is you unbolt your leaf spring perch, and then you get this plate and you bolt it onto the top. So that's the plate I was talking about. So you see it's your leaf spring, and then there's that little extension. It raises the bump stop. So that's the bump stop, and it just hits that plate right there. And it just goes bolted right up where your leaf springs. You replace your perch right there and you bolt up the plate, and bam, you got bump stops. So those are the basics you need to actually fit the 33s on no lift on an X-ray. You cut the shit out of your fenders, you bump stop, and that's pretty much it. Now, most people are gonna say that there's no need to cut all the way up to that body line up in the front. Well, for my needs, or for what I wanted, I at least wanted some up travel. So for the fender not to cut the shit out of my tire, I decided to go all the way up to the body line. Why? Because that body line is just above the frame or subframe, however you want to call it. So if the tire's gonna hit something, it's gonna hit that first. But since we bump stopped it, it's not gonna hit at all, or at least it's not gonna completely lay all the weight on it. So those are the basics to get 33s on with no lift. You cut the shit out of your fenders, front and rear, and you bump stop. Now, since this is a low cog setup and it's all about down travel, one of the most important things you do first is change your brake lines. You want longer brake lines because you're gonna have more down travel, and you don't want to be snapping your brake lines when you're on the trail, especially if you're like in a descent and you're pretty much fucked after that. So one of the most important there is obviously brake line. Now, how I said in my other videos, things that limit your droop are obviously your sway bar, but I'm not running sway bars at all. I don't have a sway bar in the front, and I don't have a sway bar in the rear. The next thing that will limit your droop is your shocks, because your shocks are connected to your body and your axle, and your axle is only going to droop as long as your shock is. So for what I did to this build is I flexed it out and I measured from where the shocks connect how long of a shock I need. After that, you measure it when it's completely flat on the ground, and that's how big of a shock you need compressed, or how big of a shock you can fit in there. So when I flexed my Jeep and I measured for longer shocks, I came up with a 26.5-inch extended shock that I need. And I think off the top of my head, that's like a shock for like a 6-inch lift. But when I measured it flat on the ground, the shock compressed was way too big to fit with no lift, obviously. So I need to go with the smaller shock. So I can't remember exactly the measurement extended, but I went with the Proton shock, which is like equivalent to a 4 to 5 inch lift, and that fits perfectly in there. It gives me just enough up travel to where it almost doesn't bottom the shock out, but it gives me the desired, or close to the desired, droop I need. And basically you flex out the rear the same. Now the rear, because it's leaf springs, it's not going to flex as much as the front, but you can still make it flex pretty good. For the rear, for me, when I flexed it, I needed a 20-inch extended shock and something that again fits when it's all flat. And I think the rear, it's not limited. I did get a shock that extends 20 inches. I think I found a shock for 22 inches. extended. So now, like I said, you're gonna measure this, and you're not gonna find a shock that meets your exact measurements, but you're gonna have to look around for what's closest. So as you can see, here's the shock. Now I do have like 2 to 3 inches of up travel before it bottoms out, but like I said, I do have bump stops for that. So it's not gonna have much up travel, but there's not much up travel in general. It's all about droop. So this is the biggest shock I was able to fit, and it flexes out pretty good. And again, here's the rear. Again, not much up travel, probably like 2 to 3 inches of up travel. Biggest shock I could fit it in there, but again, in the rear, there's almost no up travel as I'm already hitting bump stop. Like I said, there's not much up travel in the rear at all because it's all really close and it's already hitting the bump stop. But it does stuff a little bit more because the bump stop is made of a rubber or something, so it compresses it a little bit more. So the tire does stuff a little bit, but it doesn't stuff up enough where it fucks up all the quarter panel on the Jeep. The next thing that limits your droop or your flex is your control arms, your upper and your lower control arms. The reason for that is because they bind. So what I did for this build is I did get lower control arms. I got lower control arms from 4x4, and I got the highest tier, which I think it's tier 4, and they come with 2 Johnny joints, one's forged and one's welded, and that really helped my flex. Now I know in one of my videos when I installed them, I put them on backwards, and all of you guys gave me shit for it. But I was so excited to get them on and try them out and flex it that I put them on backwards. But I promise I fucking fixed that. Once I edited the video and everything, I was like, fuck, I put those on backwards. I went back and I fixed it, and they're on correctly now. And the other things that hurt your flex is obviously your track bar and your steering. Now with this, I went with the CAFAB crossover steering. The reason I did that is, again, so the steering doesn't bind, but again, the steering on X's are really weak, and I needed something stronger. And here is the steering, CAFAB's crossover steering kit with Heim joints. It's been really good, and like I said, I don't run a sway bar, so I don't need the clearance kit, so fits perfectly fine, lock to lock. The only issue with this system, now I have the stock track bar and the stock track bar mount locations and everything, and the tie rod bar hits the track bar bolt right here at the bottom. But this is not that big of an issue. It's gonna self-clear by itself, so again, nothing you should shy away from. And here's the lower control arms from Corp 4x4. As you can see, they're installed correctly now. So this is a forged Johnny joint, and back there you got the welded Johnny joint. And I mean, these guys really help my flex. Alright, this next mod is for those people that comment my videos saying, why would you try that obstacle? Why would you do this? This is painful to watch, it's too harsh, blah blah. Guys, Jeep has armor, it's fine, relax. Now, isn't that why there's a saying that goes, it's a Jeep, or it's a Jeep thing? You know, I bought this Jeep to go off-roading, to go rock crawling, to have fun, you know? It's gonna get hit, it's gonna get beat up, and I mean, it's a fucking XJ too, so I'm not gonna completely limit my fun or completely not do shit. You know, I ain't no bitch. So I'm gonna try the hardest obstacles because I want to see what this thing can do. That's why I built it like this. But I do take precautions. You know, I like to say it's a calculated risk. You know, I'm gonna do some dumb shit, but it's kind of a calculated risk, right? I'm not being a complete dumbass with it. So like I said, it's got armor, guys, so relax, it's gonna be fine. So with that being said, the armor I got for this Jeep is obviously, as you can see, rock sliders. Now all the armor is by JCR, so I got these JCR classic rock sliders, and they've been doing a really great job protecting this Jeep. I mean, you know when you're in your regular car and you hit a pothole and you're just like, oh fuck, I felt that shit in my soul, and then you're like, I'm sorry car, and all that shit. I've had quite a few of those hits on this Jeep with this armor, and I've hit it hard, and I'm like, holy fuck, that fucking hurt me. But I mean, JCR has built some really good shit. I mean, this rock slider protected very well, my doors, my panels, nothing is bent, so it's doing a really good job. Now besides this, I also do have a transfer case skid plate, which I also use a lot. I scrape it, I hit it, I bump obstacles with it, and I mean, it's protecting everything really, really good. And then the other thing I have is a gas tank skid plate. Now, I don't use that as frequently as I thought, but it's there just in case. Now, as far as protecting the XJ, what makes an XJ, the unibody, I do have frame stiffeners. Now, I have frame stiffeners from Hooligan Off-Road, and I truly believe those are the best frame stiffeners you can get for the XJ. They have them from your front cross member to your front frame to your mid frame all the way to the rear. They wrap around and they fully connect. So basically, to put the transfer case skid plate on and the rock sliders, they bolt onto the frame. So you just drill out the holes and you bolt it in. As you can see, you just drill the holes and you bolt it in, and it's really, really solid in there, especially because of this frame stiffener. That's pretty much it for this video, guys. Let me know in the comments what you think of my build, because like I said, this is stage 1. I'm gonna call this stage 1 of the build. Obviously, changes in the future are gonna happen, but again, that all depends on budget, because I am in college. So drop down in the comments, let me know what you think. Let me know, oh, you're still fucking stupid for running this, or nah, fuck yeah, it's a dope setup, it does good. And yes, stay tuned for more off-roading videos. It's about to be summer, spring, whatever. Hopefully some really cool trails are gonna be open, and I'm gonna do tougher trails. Like I said, I'm gonna see what this setup can do. Deuces.